Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Mambo doing a little bit of a guest appearance here on the channel here, and today we're going to be bringing you a top 8 match from the official Discord for Histlander's monthly tournament for February. We have Emperor Stove versus Izanagi 104, and as you can see, we're going to be starting in the classic format. We have a very strong play that I'm sure a lot of the older people might be familiar with. That's just summon Tour Guide, summon Sangan in defense position, set 1, and Izanagi's going to fire right back with Mystical Space Typhoon, and then normal summon the Spellbook Magician of Prophecy. Now, they're going to follow that up by activating Star Hall here, so they want to go ahead and try to establish some momentum here, and they opened a very strong hand. So you got Prophecy and you got Secret, so you got both of your cards right off the bat that are going to be able to turbo you for basically the remainder of your deck. So Secrets is going to go ahead and grab Master. Master is then going to reveal the Grand Spellbook Tower, and that is going to allow them to copy Secrets, and they'll get to add one more card to their hand. Now, since there's nothing really stopping them here, they are going to go ahead and add Power, so this is going to be a great way for them to be able to remove something off the board and to still be able to keep momentum rolling, as they're going to use the Power there on the Spellboy, and that's going to put another counter on the Star Hall up to 3, and we'll go ahead and get into battle phase. And they are going to go for the Tour Guide here, going to try and deny as much advantage as they can. Now, of course, Spellbooks do have access to Spellbook of Fate. And, of course, this being Histlander, everything is at one copy. So everything that you've seen them use so far, that is their only copy. So they have gone through quite a significant amount of cards for this one play. And they are going to be met by a Tragodia at the end of the damage calc there. But Power will trigger. And we'll see what they go for here. That is going to be the Spellbook of Fate. And of course, Spellbook of Fate, an immensely powerful card, not only in the classic format where spellbooks were good back in, around the 2000, pretty much anywhere from 2012 to early 2014. Spellbook of Fate, still to this day, is just an absolutely incredible card. It would even out Dragoon, pretty much an out to anything, being a non-targeting banish. Now, we're going to pass it back to Emperor Stove here after setting 2 cards and activating the Grand Spellbook Tower. They're going to draw for turn. That's going to bump the Tragodia to 1800, and now they need to figure out a way to get through the Blue Boy and to find a way to maneuver around this Spellbook of Fate. And they're not in too bad of a position to do that. The Sangan, of course, is going to be able to do quite well in and of itself, and this is Plant Synchro, so that deck absolutely has so many tools, a huge toolbox at their disposal to try and bring the momentum back in this game. And they're going to take their time to think about it, definitely no rush here, and it's very tricky board state. Now, the thing with Spellbook, like I said, everything, as I'm sure most of you know, is at one copy in this format, so that knowing that the Spellbook player, Izanagi, has run through quite a few cards, if they can break this current position, they actually have a pretty good shot of being able to overwhelm them from there. We haven't seen too many cards here, just an enemy controller and a Tour Guide, as well as the Sangan and Tragodia. So we haven't seen any of the more powerful cards, a Lone Fire Blossom, Glow Bulb, Spore, so on and so forth. And we're just going to switch everything to attack position. And it looks like they want to try and force that Spellbook of Fate before anything else goes on here. Sangan will attack in first. That would be a very good target to use the Spellbook of Fate on. But at the same time, they are going to go ahead and use it. They're going to banish 3 for cost. That's going to get rid of Power, Fate. Or no, I'm sorry, that's going to be Power, Secrets, and Master. So the 3 sort of core Spellbook cards you would usually use your entire search loop for. Now, waiting on the resolution here. They are going to go ahead and get rid of the Tragodia. That's going to bring the Blue Boy up to 1,000, as that will put the 5th counter on the Star Hall. So they will at least crash the Sangan. It won't be completely free advantage. I suppose either way, they're actually getting a +1 here. And in a way, this is going to turbo them a little bit. They haven't normal summoned our Plant Synchro player. So this might be the opportunity they need, is they're going to take a Doppel Warrior. So they are setting up for some sort of a push here by the look of it. But they're going to respond with Mind Crush here. Still in the battle phase. They're going to call the Doppel Warrior. That's going to go ahead and get rid of the Doppel Warrior. Now, of course, Mind Crush was... The rulings on Mind Crush were changed about a year and a half ago, to where you don't have to reveal your hand anymore. So they are just going to get rid of the Doppel Warrior and move on. And of course, naturally, we're in Histlander format, we know that's the only copy of Doppel Warrior. But they also have eroded to back it up, and they're going to add the Junk Synchron. But instead, they're just going to go for set 1 and pass it back. So like I said, they've now managed to work through pretty much the entire board here. Now, Secret's Power and Master are banished, so that's going to make it a little bit more difficult. And now the Grand Spellbook Tower is going to send the only legal copy with Spellbook of Fate back, and they'll draw 1 extra card. So now they need to figure out how to get back the momentum here, as they're just going to set 1 and pass it back. Now this puts Emperor Stove absolutely in the driver's seat, as Junk Synchron and Doppel Warrior are both online. And we can see them talking there about the interactions of Mind Crush, and yeah, like I said, the newer rulings of Mind Crush are in effect, so they will not have the hand revealed. And it looks like they are going to take the opportunity now to go ahead and try to make a push. Junk Synchron is going to bring back the Doppel Warrior, and DD Crow is the answer there. Neither player really able to get any substantial amount of advantage here, as that will most likely stall out the turn. We don't know what this set card is. That is absolutely a huge, huge roadblock right now, as they are just going to go to battle phase. They're going to swing into the face down. And it's a Sangan. So yeah, here we go. Izanagi will now be allowed to resolve their Sangan, and this will fetch them. I actually don't know what this will fetch them, as the blue boy is already in graveyard. It's going to be the... Oh, wow, the Maiden with Eyes of Blue. Interesting. Okay, so this is a Spellbook with Blue Eyes White Dragon. That's very cool. I remember that was a very popular... Not a very popular, but it was definitely a very legitimate deck back in the day. It was playing... When the Blue Eyes Structure deck came out, playing it with Spellbook of Power, since targeting the Maiden with Power would allow you to summon a Blue Eyes from the deck with their effect. But they are just going to summon the Maiden. They're going to set 1 and pass. Now, of course, the Maiden, it's a very scary card to attack. So if you swing into this Maiden, it'll go to defense position. It'll summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from hand, deck, or graveyard. So you really need to figure out sort of a cheeky way to get rid of this without necessarily going to battle. But, of course, when a card or effect targets this card, you can also special summon a Blue Eyes White Dragon from your hand, deck, or graveyard. You can only use 1 of those effects per turn, but either way, this is a very tricky card to out, especially in a more simplified format like Histlander. I suppose we've talked a lot about Izanagi has used a significant amount of their cards here. We now see Doppel Warrior is banished, Tour Guide, Sangan, and Reinforcement of the Army have been used by our Plant Synchro player. They've also lost Tragodia, which is one of their more powerful... I suppose you can call it a hand trap, but one of their other more powerful options. So they're a little bit low on stuff too, as they're going to normal summon the Gen X Neutron. Very interesting card, as it's sort of a Stratos in a way, but it's going to be in the end phase. So once per turn in the end phase, if this card rather was normal summon, you can add a machine type tuner. And they're going to flip summon the Glow Up Bulb. So this now gives them some room to breathe here. They got a lot of options available to them. Like we said, Plant Synchro is a toolbox more than anything, so we'll see what options they opt for here with their current board state. Actually, the Maiden is going to be very difficult to out no matter what, at least trying to get through it and the Blue Eyes White Dragon, but that is a rather good way to do it. The Ally of Justice Catastor will be able to take care of the Blue Eyes after the Junk Synchron swings into the Maiden. Maiden's effect will trigger. They'll go to defense position. That'll bring out the Blue Eyes White Dragon, hopefully from the deck. That'll be a pretty miserable brick, and they are going to summon the Blue Eyes with the correct art. Very good. And that will now leave the Blue Eyes open for Catastor. And we're actually still waiting on the resolution of battle, it looks like. No, it's just going to have Catastor go into the Maiden. And Catastor's effect will take care of that. So the Maiden has successfully been navigated around, and now it's sort of a similar scenario where it's very difficult to sort of just attack the Maiden and deal with it. because then, of course, you have to deal with the Blue Eyes White Dragon. Cataster puts you in a very similar scenario where now it's very tricky to out the Cataster as well without some very specific cards. And, of course, our Spellbook player has run through definitely their best available answer, that being the Spellbook of Fate. And now they are going to swing to the Junk Synchron, and that will pretty much be their entire turn as they're going to pass back. Emperor Stove will draw for turn. They're going to go to battle phase, swing with the Cataster into the Blue Eyes White Dragon. That'll trigger the Cataster. No response. The Blue Eyes White Dragon goes to graveyard. And Emperor Stove, as you can see, the card advantage here is pretty much even. But Stove, you really are far ahead with this Ally Discaster. Now, this is an interesting top deck. They hit the Spellbook Library of the Crescent, so this will reveal 3 Spellbook spell cards with different names from the deck. Opponent will randomly select one. They'll add that one to hand, and the other 2 will go back into the deck. Not sure what they revealed here. That wasn't revealed to me, but of course, the more important thing to note is that 3 of the best targets there are not available, but it looks like they did hit Spellbook of Eternity, which is going to get them back into this. They're going to target the Spellbook of Secrets. I can't remember a time where Eternity didn't grab Secrets. I've been playing a long time, but it seems like that's always been the most popular target. So now with Spellbook of Secrets in hand, we now have 7 counters on the Spellbook Star Hall, but we still need to find a monster, as the only prophecy monster, or I guess Spellbook monster that can be searched with secrets is the Spellbook Magician of Prophecy, which has been resting comfortably for about 8 turns or so now. So we're going to pass it back. Stove in control with the Ally of Justice Cataster. Now, no life point damage has been dealt to Izanagi. So that it does give them a little bit of breathing room as long as Emperor Stove is not able to put up much of a push here. Because as we saw, we talked about the Gen X Neutron being sort of a Stratos. The reason why it's not anywhere near as good as any of those more typical Elemental Hero Stratos-like cards is it still needs to be on the field during the end phase in order to trigger its effect. So when it was synchroed away, they did not get that search. But we're going to see them summon the TG Warwolf and just go straight to battle phase, and they're going to swing in for 12 and then look to get in for 22 as well to even up the life point total here. All right, so that is going to put Izanagi at 46. Nothing else for their turn. They'll give it back. And Spellbook of Secrets is still in the hand. That's the only common knowledge we have from our Spellbook player. They are going to get Grand Spellbook Tower now, as the Spellbook of Eternity is in the graveyard. So that's going to give them an extra draw. They'll get to Pot of Greed this turn, essentially. And this is pretty much the turn where you need to figure something out. They are going to fire secrets, so they're going to look for something here. Now, they do have access to go ahead and get Eternity back, which they will do, which means they are able to sort of set up that search loop that we saw on turn 1 with Spellbook Magician of Prophecy into Secrets, into Spellbook of the Master. They're going to go ahead and take Power here instead, though. Which, of course, as we've said a few times, everything is at 1 in this particular format. And we're going to see Tsukuyomi come down. That is going to target the Cataster. Tsukuyomi is also a Dark Attribute monster, so this does very well, very easily, I should say, handle the Cataster. Yep, and that will flip it face down. Tsukuyomi, I believe, was printed as an ultimate rare at this time. I might have my timeline mixed up, but they are going to swing into the Cataster. If that back row is not able to answer it, this will be a pretty solid position, assuming that Emperor Stove does not hit one of their faster cards. It's going to be Forbidden Lance. That is going to make, not only will that reduce by 800, that is also going to turn off the Spellbook Star Hall. So now we're looking for Spellbook of Wisdom as the best possible answer here. If I remember what that card does correctly. Because that might also make it immune to the Spellbook Star Hall. Taking their time to think about it, though. And this is a tricky scenario, too, because the worst thing here is if the Tsukuyomi's attack is not able to get through and destroy the Cataster, it will go back to hand in the end phase, and then you're pretty much in the exact same scenario. And that easily sets up lethal scenarios, and instead they're going to hard activate the Spellbook of Fate that was drawn at one point or another. They're going to use that to flip the Sook face down. Okay, so Tsukiyomi with 1,400 defense points. That is going to pass it back to Emperor Stove after that particular chain. Now, Tsukiyomi will be able to flip something face down when it's flipped face up. So even if the Catastor does come face up and attack into it, they will still be able to most likely prevent lethal. It would have to be a crazy combination of cards. But to note, we do still have a glow-up bulb that has not used its effect in the graveyard here. And that, I believe, is the only relevant effect. We haven't seen Spore, we haven't seen Lone Fire Blossom or anything like that to really push the board here. Alright, we're going to see Plague Spreader Zombie. So yeah, this is where the toolbox kind of opens, because now you have access to a level 5 Synchro, and then you can step that up into a level 7, or pretty much anywhere from a level 6 to a level 8, as you now have access to bring back both Glow-Up Bulb and Plague Spreader. They're going to go for TG Hyper Librarian. Flip summon the Catastor, so they're just going to put 2 bodies on board here. And they'll go to battle phase, not going to commit to anything yet, which I think is a smart play. We've seen for the last 4 or 5 turns now that they are very well ahead in the current game state, so no reason to sort of rush anything here. The Sook will be flipped up by the Catastor's attack. That'll flip the TG Hyper Librarian face down, and that will keep them from taking any unnecessary damage this turn. Now, they've pretty much find themselves in the exact same scenario. Now, the Hyper Librarian is a little bit bigger on the defensive side at 1,800, but Star Hall with 10 counters now, that's not as big of an issue, and Grand Spellbook Tower is going to bring back Eternity right now. And off the Spellbook of Fate, we saw, since they used the flip effect, it was 2 Secrets and Library of the Crescent. As Crescent has already more or less been used the one time you'll ever usually get to use it in a typical game. And hoping to find Eternity in some way, shape, or form here, as Spellbook Tower does send it to the bottom of the deck. They do have Spellbook of Power, so almost, not quite, but almost any spellcaster monster here can at least get you somewhere. And it's just going to be a set 1 and a set monster. Alright, so we'll pass it back to Emperor Stove. And this, I don't really think you get much more of a commanding position than this. Not only do they have already the board advantage with the Librarian and the Catastor, now something like a Torrential Tribute here would fix that, but Bottomless Trap Hole will come out instead on the TG Hyper Librarian. And still just no explosiveness right now. Now, they did get a lot of resources denied from them, but still nothing here to try and push in for game, just really allowing Izanagi to buy some time here. Now, the thing is that it's a little bit tricky because it now sort of gives the illusion that if this Catastor is outed, what is their follow-up going to be? Going to see the tower in the standby phase. That's going to send back the Spellbook of Fate, as of course they want to loop that as many times as possible. It's an effect failure that was set last turn. They'll set another monster in face down defense position this turn and pass it back. And okay, here we go. So that's going to be tuning off the top. That's going to get the Unknown Synchron. And it's going to mill Brain Control. So that is unfortunate. It's a very powerful card. I think in this particular scenario, you're not too upset with seeing that go to the graveyard. You're not really it's a very reactive card. It's not really helping them in this particular scenario. And once again, they're just going to go to battle phase. And they're going to swing over the Tour Guide. Yeah, the Sangan was used earlier, so the Tour Guide most likely out of targets here. Main phase 2, they're going to set a monster in face down defense position, pass it back to our Spellbook player. They're going to find Pot of Duality off the top. It's going to reveal Book of Moon, Compulse, and Spellbook of Life. Okay, so this turns a lot of things on for sure. Now, Tsukiyomi cannot be special summoned. Effect Veiler and I believe Spellbook Magician of Prophecy are the only legal targets. Oh, there is Maiden with Eyes of Blue is also a legal target here. They're going to take the compulsory evacuation device. That is, without a doubt, the cleanest out to what we're seeing on the board right now. That will go face down. We'll send it back to Emperor's Stove. And the thing with duality is we know that that's a compulse. So now you sort of ask the question, do you go ahead and try to make a play here? Do you try to do something like Black Rose Dragon? Which, Black Rose Dragon would, of course, eliminate the back row, but it would more or less, it would balance out card advantage. So if we were to Black Rose Dragon, since I've just brought up the idea, it would essentially 4 cards versus 4 cards. However, the Star Hall, when it's destroyed with a spell counter and sent to the graveyard, you add a spellcaster type monster from your deck to your hand whose level is less than or equal to the number of spell counters. There is 10 on this card, so that would search pretty much any monster in their deck at this point. So they need to sort of figure out a way to either misdirect the compulse or to force it in an awkward way, I think is a better way to put it. And they're going to take their time to sort of mold this one over, as they do have a lot of options available to them. We know that the Unknown Synchron was added to hand, and there is a Plague Spreader and a Glow Bulb that are primed and ready to fire out of the graveyard. Been a very tightly contested game here in Classic. Just game 1 of our top 8 here from the February monthly. I suppose I'll take the opportunity, if you guys are newer to the channel, as we are going to see the Plague Spreader, you should definitely... We'll have the link to the Histlander, the official Discord for the format, in the description. Definitely check that out. So Plague Spreader is going to send 1 card from their hand to the top of the deck, special summon out of the graveyard. And they're going to tribute summon for Gors, the Emissary of Darkness. I have never, I've been playing for 10 years I've never seen this play happen. I've seen tribute summon Nibiru. I've seen a lot of crazy tribute summons. I've never seen tribute summon Gors. Okay, and yeah, here we go. They're going to fire everything off. Glow Bulb is going to mill the Unknown Synchron that they top decked off of the Plague Spreader, and they now have access to a level 6 or 8 Synchro. And that is going to make Thought Ruler Archfiend. So this is what I meant when I said to misdirect the compulse, because now you have 2 threats that you have to deal with. And the thing here, too, is that with the Thought Ruler Archfiend, you can't even compulse it, as they would simply just be able to negate it with the Thought Ruler's effect. So that does out the Cataster, but now you're in essentially the same scenario. You're on Lethal's doorstep here. You're on a 1-turn counter with what is presented to you. You're up on cards. They've now used the 2 scariest effects that they had available to them. So this is it. You pretty much have to find your out here. They are going to set 1 card. All right. It's now or never. Is it Mirror Force? Is it Sakuretsu Armor? Draining Shield? It is Mirror Force. Okay. And just like that, the game has been turned on its head, and the advantage... Now, the life points, it's a big discrepancy, but the advantage is, in terms of card advantage, very firmly in Izanagi's favor. Now, main phase 2, we're going to discard 1 card. I want to assume this is Quick Draw Synchron. That's never a good sign, as the Quick Draw Synchron does come out in defense position. The TG Striker was discarded. And, I mean, not much to say here. This is the unfortunate part sometimes of running on the automatic simulators, is misclicks can happen, and they are far, far more impactful. The Quick Draw Synchron lie in defense position, staring down 6 cards, 7 if you count the field spell. It's a Level Eater, though, is the last card in hand. So this will give them something. They're going to go into Drill Warrior. Now, Drill Warrior is a fairly cool card. I've seen matches before where Drill Warrior essentially loops Dandelion every turn to set up a defensive board, and will still allow the Drill Warrior to attack directly each turn. So we're going to end on Drill Warrior, and only Drill Warrior, it looks like. Now, the Level Eater can go off. if you want the extra body. But at this point, we do know Izanagi is getting deep into their deck. We're instead going to see Spore. That's going to banish the Glow-Up Bulb. That'll make Spore a level 2. But as I was saying, we are very deep into our Spellbook player's deck, so it's very likely that they are going to be able to find an answer here, be able to hit that Spellbook of Fate one more time, and then hopefully find a Spellcaster monster that can be used with it. Better yet, High Priestess of Prophecy is revealed. They're going to reveal Power, Wisdom, and Eternity. And with 10 counters on that Spellbook Star Hall, they aren't going to need the Power. They can activate it here if they really want to guarantee Fate. Instead, they're going to use Eternity to search secrets, which will be admittedly a much easier way. Definitely cuts out a few steps to get to that Spellbook of Fate. Alright, so Spellbook of Secrets here. Lethal it's not out of the question. They're going to go for Spellbook of Life off of the Secrets. And it looks like they do want to go ahead and make that push. So Spellbook of Life, that is going to banish a Spellcaster. Then you target, and you reveal a Spellbook. This is one of the more confusing cards. You need to control a Spellcaster on the field, banish a Spellcaster from your graveyard, reveal a Spellbook card in your hand, and then you special summon that target and increase its level by the level of the monster you banish. Now here's the play. You're going to Spellbook of Power onto the Maiden that you got back from life. Now Maiden's effect will trigger. That's going to get the Blue Eyes White Dragon back. And just like that, the game is over. Just like that, a huge turnaround. A stalemated game for 21 turns, and just like that. And I talked a lot about the explosiveness of our Plant Synchro deck, but just like that, in the blink of an eye, the Spellbook deck pops off and presents Lethal, and game 1 goes to Izanagi as we're going to head into our Modern match off of this one. Alright, we are back with the second game of our top 8 match from the February monthly for Histlander. This is going to be the Modern match, so this will be every deck from 2014 and on, and Izanagi, who won game 1 with a insanely close game with Spellbooks, is going to open play with Unchained. They're going to set the Escape of the Unchained, they're going to activate Aruha, and then Escape is going to trigger to give them Rakia, and then Rakia will trigger, destroying the Aruha. Aruha will trigger, and we're pretty much just in the vortex now of Unchained effects going off. That's going to summon Sarama as they've opened what appears to be every good Unchained card. So Sarama is going to set the Escape. That'll allow them to destroy the Rakia. Rakia will trigger. That will allow them to finally end on the Unchained Soul of Disaster. And those will link away into the Unchained Soul of Rage. We're going to set one more, two more, pass it back. So we played out our entire hand as we're going to pass it back to Emperor Stove. Now, they, of course, are down a game. They're going to need this one, and they are on Earth Machine. So, more or less, Earth Machine, which I think is pretty much you can just describe as a good stuff deck. Just good machine cards that do good things. Very resilient deck, a lot of searching. Similar to Plant Synchro, very much a toolbox deck that has a lot of options available to it. Almost every hand is rather playable. And of course, I suppose I should comment. I did change the background real quick. Do love my wife, but thought maybe that might be jarring. So, gonna go with the old brand here. Gonna start with a Cosmic Cyclone. That's gonna go on to the known card. That's the Escape of the Unchained. That is going to remove one form of interaction from our Unchained player. So 2 more set cards now. This was a very strong opener from the Unchained as they're going to lead with the Machina Air Raider. It's going to discard the Megaform. Now Air Raider can target a Machine monster you control during your opponent's turn. Special summon a Machine monster with a different name and an equal level lower than that monster. Solid card in this particular scenario, but they're going to be met with Gravedigger's Trap Hole. Very interesting. Now, of course, there's no siding in this format. So that is just a raw Gravedigger's Trap Hole they have in the deck to help. I'm assuming to help probably against hand traps and other interesting interactions like the one we just saw. But they're going to follow that up with a normal summon of Flying Pegasus Railroad Stampede. That's going to summon the Megaform out of the graveyard. Now, of course, Pegasus, unbelievably powerful card in simplified formats, not only being a sort of monster reborn, on the normal summon, but can also open up a whole mess load of Xyz plays, as it can also copy the level of that monster or have that monster's level copy the Pegasus. And they're going to sort of mull over their decisions here. Now, the issue, of course, is the fact that the Unchained Soul of Rage is able to link away with one of the special summoned monsters on the opponent's side of the field. And sort of crashing into the Pegasus with the Pegasus would not be a particularly great play either, since they would be able to float that into a Fiend monster from graveyard. They're going to go ahead and fire it on the Mega form here, and that's going to bring out the Unchained Soul of Anguish. Same effect, more or less. Same effect, but it does not have to be special summoned monsters, so this gives them a little bit more flexibility here if Emperor Stove was able to present one more threat. And they're going to follow it all up with Infinitrack Brutal Dozer. So that will tribute an Earth Machine monster. They will special summon this, and that will get them an Infinitrack monster from deck. So similar to sort of how we saw last game when I talked about misdirecting with the compulsory evacuation device, now you're sort of trying to see if you can misdirect or bait out this effect from the Anguish, as they're going to overlay into River Stormer. They're going to get the effect off here. Going to detach one. That will allow them to take an Earth Machine from the deck and either add it to the hand or send it to the graveyard. So this will give them a pretty decent amount of follow-up here. Assuming that the, if, for instance, the Anguish were used here. And instead they're going to mill the Machina Citadel, which is going to be immediately so fast they activated that Called by the Grave. They were waiting, foaming at the mouth, waiting for the Machina Citadel to go to graveyard. So the Citadel is now out of the game. Very big deal. That is more or less the boss monster of this Earth Machine deck. Being able to recur itself on a 3000 body and being a sort of Raigeki. Very useful. Now we're going to go to battle phase here. The River Stormer is going to beat the Unchained Soul of Anguish. Now Anguish's effect we'll get to trigger here on Chain Link 2, as they're going to also get the effect of River Stormer. So that's going to get back the Sarama, and that's going to attach the Unchained Soul of Anguish to the River Stormer. Now, Sarama is exactly what they need here. It's the only card they have. They're only staring down a River Stormer and a back row. But Sarama will give them the opportunity to sort of try again. And they top decked Galaxy Cyclone. They are now free to more or less do whatever they want here with the Sarama. So the set card is Machina Overdrive. They're going to chain that, targeting the River Stormer. And that is going to allow them to get the... Oh, it's going to get Metal Cruncher from deck. And of course, Metal Cruncher is going to get its effect, and that is going to allow them to reveal 3 Earth monsters from the deck. Opponent randomly selects one, similar to how we saw with the Spellbook Library of the Crescent. One of them will go to hand, the rest will go back into the deck. So this is sort of what we tend to see from this Earth Machine deck, where almost every single card is able to search each other. And then, of course, just a lot of ability to recur itself through things like Pegasus and things like Citadel. And we're going to see the Sarama follow up here. That is going to summon the Unchained Soul of Disaster face down. They're going to use the on resolution of Sarama's effect, better said. They're going to pop the Unchained Soul of Disaster, and that is going to allow them to special summon the Unchained Soul of Anguish. They're going to use Anguish's effect, which can only be used on your turn, if I'm now remembering the effects correctly. It can. They're going to use that to link the Metal Cruncher away and go into the Unchained's Abomination. Emperor Stove telling the audience that they do not know what Unchained cards do. Fortunately, I have covered for them by also not knowing what any card that has been activated does. Curse of being a Yugi boomer. They are going to get in for 45, though, and pass it back. So it's far from over, certainly. Now, the Unchained Abomination is definitely a threat, but they have plenty of cards here. They, like I said, everything in the Earth Machine deck is more or less able to search or recur resources or push resources in some way, shape, or form. Now, what's nice here is Machina Overdrive, they'll get to use the graveyard effect, and similar to, I suppose you would say, Zodiac combo, banish this card, you get to target 3 of the machine monsters that are banished or in your graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and then draw 1 card. So similar to combo, except for it can also do the banish zone, which means Machina Citadel is back into the game somewhere. It's in the deck unless they top decked it. So now they still have that as a very clear win condition. However, it's not the best card, obviously, to use against a deck like Unchained, where they love being destroyed. Absolutely love it. But as you can see here, though, there is really no particular interaction here on our Unchained player's side. They don't have anything immediately stopping the play right now, which is probably the most important thing. And thanks to Citadel, they're more or less fresh on their resources. They have used some of their better cards in the graveyard right now, things like Railroad, but they were able to replenish their extra deck. So they more or less have their entire toolbox open to them, and I think that's why we should expect them to sort of take their time here and make their decision. And it's definitely not a particularly easy scenario either. You still have to deal with the Sarama. Can't really swing into that by battle, because then, of course, the Unchained Abomination will get its effect. So you need to figure out a way to get to the Abomination first, but at the same time, you still need to be able to handle the Sarama. Otherwise, you're just going to have to deal with the Sarama effect doing more or less exactly what it did last turn. Now, they're going to open with the Air Raider, much like they did last turn. That's going to discard the Machina Fortress. Now, Air Raider's effect can only be used during the opponent's turn, so this by itself is not really doing anything. Alright, the follow-up is going to be Super Express Bullet Train. Since all monsters they control are Earth Machines, they can special summon that card from their hand as a level 10. It's not able to really attack in this scenario either, since it has a horrible, horrible attacking condition where you have to send 2 other cards you control to the graveyard to declare an attack. Not lined up for an Xyz play here. A Link play would work. It's available, but they're very much up against the walls. They are in a fairly precarious situation against this particular board, and they are on a 1-turn counter. They will more or less lose the game if they are not able to beat this board this turn. And it looks like they aren't able to, so that is going to be Izanagi taking it in a 2-0 over Emperor Stove. So congratulations to them moving on in the tournament. And also congratulations to Emperor Stove for another top 8 performance. So that was today's top 8 match. Like I said, go ahead and check the description for the Discord link if you guys are interested in this format. A mix between Highlander and historical format. Super fun, great time, always great to take a break from the normal TCG with alternate formats. Highly recommend it. And we thank you guys for watching. You guys, we'll see you next time.